Hi beautiful, welcome back to my channel. Excuse my appearance at the moment because I'm feeling under the weather and I don't really feel like dressing up. But I actually wanted to test the eyeshadow from Oxx Studio, and this is the 15 pan eyeshadow palette, and this one is in the shade, or actually this is in Nightfall. They have two other eyeshadow palettes. I have already done a first impression on this eyeshadow palette, but I figured that one look is not really enough to justify if this eyeshadow palette is worth the money. So in my previous look, I have tried this green shade right here, which comes off as like a somewhat teal green on the screen, but this is just like a green, and then this dark blue right here, and obviously the mattes transition shades in here. I love these transition shades, though I wish that there should have been a color in between the shade, or if they're mixed together that would be like a perfect gradient shade. But other than that, it's pretty alright. I've tried this gold shade, which I feel like this is the most pigmented out of the bunch, so that's the gold shade, and that's what it looks like. And for $12, I feel like if there's at least 4 eyeshadows in here, that works great. I'm happy with it. So I wanted to create a look with using these two shades right here. So I have this somewhat dark eggplant color, which looks pretty promising when I swatched it. And I also wanted to incorporate a little bit of that cranberry shade, which again looks pretty promising, as well as this shade right here, which looks basically white on the screen, but it is actually somewhat like a champagne gold eyeshadow. So that's what it looks like right there. That shade right there doesn't really feel or swatch good, but the other two are actually pretty alright. So these are the shades, and oh my god, they're actually quite pigmented. Also, I have a mini blender sponge that I purchased from the same brand. It's called the OXX Makeup Blender. So you have two in a packet, and this is what it originally looks like, and this is what it looks like when it's dampened. And personally, I love the feel of it. It doesn't have a lot of resistance to it. It feels very soft, very squishy, and I think I paid $4 for the two, which is pretty affordable. So without further ado, let's hop right into the video. I use the AOA Studio Wondercover Concealer, and this is in the shade yellow, and I actually quite like this concealer, especially if I want the eyeshadows to pop more. I also wanted the eyeshadow palette to work because that would be ideal for all my people out there that are on a budget and can't keep up with the new releases at the drugstore. Even though it's a drugstore, but here in New Zealand, makeup costs at least $30, even for like Maybelline or L'Oreal, which is pretty annoying. So anyway, I'm going to try out and blend this eyeshadow base with this sponge. It feels good against my skin. It doesn't feel hard, and it actually blended out the eyeshadow base pretty good. So I'm going to bring that a little bit on my under eye. And that actually did a good job. Usually I would use a brush to blend the eyeshadow base, or like my face beauty sponge, but this one is really good, especially if you kind of just want to touch up the eye area or like blend parts that are very intricate. And I love the fact that the size allows me to precisely blend the concealer underneath the brows. So now what I am going to do is to set that eyeshadow base. I am just gonna quickly use this face powder right here before we hop onto the eyeshadow palette. I'm feeling a little bit nasally at the moment, and I wasn't going to film, but then, you know, I don't want to just sit at home and binge watch Netflix or YouTube, so I need to be productive. Now we're going to move on to the eyeshadow palette. Instead of taking this basic base eyeshadow, I am going to take this shadow right here, which has a little bit of beige tone to it, and use that as my base. This eyeshadow has got a little bit of kickback to it, especially the matte, so just keep that in mind. And for transition shade, I am going to jump straight I'm going to jump straight into this dark brown shade right here, and I'm going to build that up sparingly. And I personally love the matte shades on this eyeshadow palette because it blends out pretty good. Like for me, that's pigmented. It doesn't look that bad though. It has a little bit of patch there, so building it up would actually help. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the brush. On my first impression, I didn't actually love the eyeshadow palette. I also didn't tremendously hate it. For me, it's a pretty average eyeshadow palette. And the color shades though, I think they're trying to mimic the MAC eyeshadow palette. So I think what I'm going to do is to actually pick up a tiny brush, and I am going to use the cranberry shade to sort of warm up the crease a little bit. I know it's shimmery, but there's no rules for makeup. You could use shimmer anywhere. So I am going to lightly put that on the crease. It's not bad. I mean, it shows up, but not intensely, which I like because you could actually build it up. And it surprisingly goes on pretty decent on the lids. Didn't fluff out a lot of that transition shade that we used before, which I think is pretty good. And I am going to go back to our transition shade, and I'm going to blend the darker brown and this one right here to blend everything. With a smaller brush, I am going to pick up the eggplant shade. It has a little bit of sheen to it as well and quite a lot of kickback. I am going to stamp that on the outer V. This eyeshadow actually showed up pretty good. So it's a little bit patchy on the outside, but for the most part, it's there. I kind of find that the stamping trick works, and then you slowly blend it out. That way the shades won't just fluff everywhere, and it won't take away the first shade that you initially put. Ooh, I love how that turned out. So I'm going to go back to that base that we used just to blend everything. Now what I'm going to do is to carve out our lid. I am going to go back to the concealer. So while the eyeshadow is a little bit damp, I mean the concealer is a little bit damp, I am then gonna go and pick up the cranberry shade and really pack that onto the lid. This eyeshadow has a little bit of fallout, so I suggest you doing your eyes first. So to make that more intense, I'm actually going to pick up this silicone pigment and glitter applicator from Essence because I find that this kind of applicator really picks up a lot of the shimmer product and packs it on the lid. Yes. And I'm going to go back to that eggplant shade just to blend this bit right here. I am quickly gonna do the same thing on the other eye, and then I'll apply false lashes, apply my full face of makeup, and then I'll come back. I am obsessed on how this eye makeup look turned out actually, especially with false lashes on. So now we are going to go on the lower lash line. I might actually just use basically one shade. So I'm going to go and use that cranberry shade that we use on our lids. And for the outer part of the eyes, I'm going to go and use the eggplant shade we used before. Apply mascara. For the inner corner, I'm going to apply this silver shade right here with a smaller brush. It doesn't really translate that good using a brush, so I'm going to use my finger. Ooh, that's so pretty. Here is my final makeup look. My thoughts on this palette for my second try. This is actually a fairly decent eyeshadow palette. Sure, it does require a lot of work. Like you would at least need a really good base, such as a white concealer or like the NYX Jumbo Eye Pencil to make everything else work. But apart from that, this is a really good eyeshadow palette, especially if you're just trying into getting into makeup. That's a lot of into. I managed to pull off this eyeshadow look using this palette, which is really great, and I'm actually quite impressed. For the price you pay, it's not a bad eyeshadow palette. You just chuck on false lashes and you're good to go. And in general, OXX Studio eyeshadow palette in Nightfall is actually a good eyeshadow palette. I am interested to see and use like these silver slash charcoal shades, so I will probably do like a third look using the same eyeshadow palette. Let me know if you have tried this eyeshadow palette, what are your thoughts. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more updates, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.